Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our session on AI readiness. My name is Lauren, and I'm the content manager for the Google Cloud community. And leading our session today is AI thought leader and senior cloud consultant at Google Cloud, Tony DiLoretto. And before diving in, I want to remind everyone that questions are encouraged. So please feel free to add those into the YouTube chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them either in the chat or at the end of the presentation. We also had a few pre-submitted questions that we will cover as well. And for any questions that we don't get to, we encourage you to search or make a post in the Google Cloud community, and someone from the community or the Google Cloud team will be happy to help you out. And the link to that is in the YouTube description. Well, I know we have a lot to cover today, so Tony, I will hand it over to you, but please don't be shy. Let us know in the chat where you're joining us from, any questions you have, or projects that you might be working on. We'd love to hear from you. All right, I'll hand it over to you, Tony.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. Super excited, super happy to be here today. And hopefully everyone gets a little bit something out of this. So yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about data and AI readiness, right? And we'll talk about some of the trends, how you can prepare. I'll even go into Gen AI, which is one of the hottest topics right now that so many people are asking me. And we'll talk about what I've learned so far about that. And again, feel free to leverage the Q&A towards the end. So we talked a little bit about the agenda and going forward. Just a quick all about me for those I haven't met yet. So again, I've been 16 plus years in the data and AI space, working with dozens of customers. As a matter of fact, I've been an engineer and a consultant to nearly a quarter of the Fortune 100 businesses, which I'm something proud of. I'm an active speaker in the AI and ML space. I've done a number of them pre-COVID, and even during virtually. Co-inventor of a new tool called AutoMLOps, which you can find in GitHub. Pretty cool way to get started if you're trying to accelerate your AI and ML. And father of two, husband of one, and I'm also a huge Bills fan for any football fans out there. So again, thanks for coming and thanks for joining. All right, with that, I'll dive first into some of the trends that we're seeing in the data and AI space in 2023. And you might be seeing the same things in your line of work. But if not, hopefully this gives you a little bit of, what's happening, what's coming, and then maybe this will help you plan for the next, few months and into next year. So the first thing that we've noticed, and, a lot of this information is public, but we also see the same thing working with customers here at Google, is that 82% of organizations, or almost more than 4/5 of them, are really looking for a unified data cloud to support their full data workload. What does that mean? Many times customers are looking for, how do I bring all my data together in a single place to be able to join either on-prem or any external data sources to make it easier to analyze, to be able to query, to be able to model, and even do ETL and all the transfer and just preparing your data best. So this is something that's really important to our customers, and we're trying to present that. Not only does Google Cloud provide, what we believe the top-notch cloud, but we also support querying of data across cloud. So you really can unify that, and that's something that we really feel strongly about. And this allows customers to do end-to-end, data workflows across wherever their data may be. That's one of our core tenets of Google, is we really want to try to meet customers where they are, and Google Cloud Platform provides that in many different fashions. The second trend that we're seeing is, the ability to have, an open system, an open protocol. What does that mean? Again, this is the ability to be able to use data and use platforms across. So whether it's open source, whether it's streamlining and being able to move your jobs, across different types, whether it's, hey, we need to get a lot of our BI tools or BI dashboards migrated and supporting that in a different environment. They're trying to move away from a closed or walled garden to an open system. And this also includes a lot of, like I said, open source. We see more and more customers looking to tools like Spark and Airflow and, trying to deploy that. And again, Google Cloud supports that, with many of our services being baked in or based on top of open source tools. This allows customers to bring jobs that they've already created and really get started up and running quickly. And again, this is going to be pivotal going forward because, the cloud is multi-cloud world where people may need to run jobs in one or the other, or maybe start in on-prem and move it into the cloud. So a data cloud needs to support and be based on an open protocol to really be key. And again, this is something that we follow very closely and want to support and help our businesses and our customers grow. This is another key stat that's really close to me, where I work with a lot of our customers on building AI models. Only half of all AI models still are going to production. And you can see that there. This is, I think, as of last year or this year, from Gartner, where 54% of models are going from some sort of research to a productionalized setting. And this is an average, obviously. And what does this mean? This means that still a large amount of work of what our data scientists, AI engineers, ML engineers are doing is valuable, but not necessarily being leveraged by the business. And that's actually a pain point or a blind spot by many businesses, because when you have a data scientist, which are very, sometimes hard to find and then, acquire and train and then get them started, it takes some time. And then for them to be working on models and solutions that ultimately don't get used, there's a lot of potential, wastage of time or not recognizing the full value. So we at Google, we try to help customers close that gap, and not to self-tout, but that's where we started with that auto ML ops services. How do we help companies, shrink that 54 or 46% number that is not going to production as small as possible? We at Google would love to help customers, realize the value of all of their data and recognize the power and the value that it brings to them, so that by simplifying the process of creating the data pipelines, doing your exploratory data analysis, by being able to go in and then analyze your data, begin to create models, and begin to, find out trends or categorizations of your data. And then once you have a solid model that meets your needs, how do you take that and move into production? That's really key. And again, many companies or many models are not getting past that, I guess, academic or research phase to go into production. And there's a lot of reasons for this that we and the Google side have seen. But in general, this is a pretty common trend within industry that we hope and we believe will continue to improve as time goes on. So this is another really interesting stat that we found. By 2025, 90% of all new enterprise application releases, doesn't necessarily applications, but the releases for those applications will include some embedded AI functionality. So we're really starting to see companies embed AI and leverage AI wherever they can. Even in some of the most innocuous places, such as, hey, we have an application that tracks when our customers log in, right? So then you can better predict, what's the likelihood of them, a customer logging in or churning, or, what do we see when a customer logs in more frequently than expected, right? Some things that seem quite, banal or kind of, again, rote, become very important once you start to leverage AI. It doesn't have to be just for your, tip of the spear type needs, but even in other aspects of business. And that's why, this stat is very compelling and very telling to the industry, that in another, 2 years, at least 90% of releases, of app releases, will contain some sort of AI functionality. That's a lot to take in, and that's also a pretty honest goal or target, right? What does that mean? We need to have data scientists to support it. We need to have data engineers to be able to produce the data and support the AI and models that are being created. You also need to have very solid and understood deployment processes, what we call CI/CD and DevOps processes, to be able to support bringing in AI. And how does that change how you're doing business today? There's a lot that goes into it. And I haven't even gotten into the fact of, once you start to leverage AI and analytics, what other considerations, maybe from a responsible AI or data security or privacy, do you have to, also familiarize yourself with? So there's a lot to unpack in that statistic, but we do believe that the industry is constantly moving this way, and we see it in our day-to-day lives. The advent of Gen AI, I'll say, in the last, 8 to 12 months has certainly accelerated this even more so. Companies have been more excited than ever to understand, how can we leverage generative AI into our into our business, into our applications, into our processes and operations. And there's a lot of new ways and innovative ways that we can take advantage of that, which I'll get into in a minute. But again, this is something that we find very key or very telling with the industry, that in a couple of years' time, most all applications or services that are creating will have some form of AI in that. All right. And then this stat over here. So AI governance is still lacking. And this really comes back to like how to prepare and, how to take advantage of everything that's going on. So 51% of organizations, or about half of them, are still lacking some form of governance plan for AI projects. What does that mean? That means that companies, even if they're starting to dabble with AI or building out models, how are you going to necessarily operationalize it? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to standardize or value it? How are you going to ensure that the models and the solutions that are being built hit your business needs? How do you make changes? How do you manage it? How do you support any sort of, again, data privacy or security requirements where your business is located? There's a lot of different aspects of governance. Again, from the data layer itself all the way through the AI and the development and deployment layer of your AI solutions. So this is an area that I personally believe there's going to be, maybe an explosion over the next couple of years in being able to better standardize and better organize how businesses are deploying AI and leveraging it. Because like we just saw in the previous trend, most of applications will use AI, but you need to have a governance plan for it. You can't just necessarily build a model and then click go live and then be ready. There's a lot of planning and there's a lot of organization that needs to go into it, that comes along with the actual engineering effort as well. So to really take advantage of this in the next 6, 12, 24 months, not only should you be planning on having some approach or some operation for how you're going to create the new AI solutions, but again, how do you want to organize and how do you want to be able to govern and ensure security and stability with everything you're building? So with these few stats and trends that we're seeing here, I want to transition a little bit into the generative AI space, because again, this is probably one of the most asked upon and desired topics that I've seen this year, and best how you and your business could take advantage of AI to really start to accelerate what you're doing. So again, AI, like it says, is always evolving. And in this case here, we're moving away from just not just, but majority analysis function to now a creation function. For those who have been in the data science space over the last 15, 20 years, we've seen the advent from simple basic regressions and classifications into neural networks again. And with the advent of big data and high performance computing, we're able to process large sums of data to be able to take advantage of that, to have highly accurate or highly statistically significant models that can help us predict or classify one thing or another. But now we're moving away from just being able to take data to produce some insight that would help us drive a business decision, to how do we create new content? And that's where we're seeing a lot of it, and hence the name generative AI. The first part of that is the creation bit. And you could see, this is sort of how we think of generative AI in a multi-tiered or multi-segmented approach, where we have now classification, prediction, which again we've always done, but generation and understanding is key now. So when you engage or you invoke a large language model and you say, who was the president of the United States in 2002, the model itself has to understand that. Obviously there's no person behind there reading and ingesting that, but the model has to be able to understand the input, be able to call the right functions to be able to produce an output, and then generate content for you that makes sense. And that's ultimately what we as end users are expecting. So like we're seeing now, the space is evolving from more of an analytical or more of an insight space to also insights plus creation, new content creation. And again, it goes beyond a single modal of data, and not only text data, but we're also talking image data and audio data and video data as well. And these are all services that within Google Cloud Platform we're helping our customers build out with. And how can you quickly take advantage of these different types of platforms to achieve these business goals quickly and effectively. This is a very interesting stat that we found, and I wanted to just quickly share with those on this gentleman here. Dr. Ed Hoffman here is, a professor at Columbia in New York, and also former chief knowledge officer at NASA. So he may know a thing or two. So Gen AI is changing organizations from the inside out, and that statement could not be more true. Literally every customer that I work with has come to me and said, Tony, how can we take advantage of this? What sorts of value, what sorts of use cases can we use with Gen AI? How do we see the value of this type of technology? And again, there's a lot to learn and a lot that could be achieved. But another thing too, I want to make sure that I reiterate is that Gen AI is not meant to be a replacement for more traditional AI that we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. It's now a new form of it, like we just showed. It's really allowing us to go beyond the analysis or insight layer and now into the creation layer, and leveraging the powerful machines to be able to produce this output really does allow companies to accelerate what they're doing. So again, why are so many companies and why is everyone excited about this? Besides the extreme growth that we've seen of many generative AI platforms and software tools over the last year, there's a number of key business benefits for this. The first is applicability. So everybody's able to understand a use case where having a machine to be able to understand an input and be able to produce logical, accurate text output or some sort of output for them would be valuable for their business, whether it's a simple chatbot to ask questions of, or to be layering in your own first-party data to not have to go through that. There's a lot of value proposition, a lot of application to that. The second one is workforce enhancements. Again, this is really where a lot of businesses are trying to take advantage of, is how do we empower our workforce to do their jobs faster and easier. And again, this is something that every technology strives to do. So Gen AI is not unique in this space. But again, the applicability or the ubiquity of the use cases of Gen AI really hit home in a workplace world. Examples such as, again, either generalize or summarize all of our data. Tell me about maybe a court case that we won, or give me a summary of all of the industry trends about a particular domain or particular region. Not having to go through and spend time collecting, analyzing, reading, parsing, does have a ton of time efficiency and allows companies to move faster. And that goes into the last case, is the operational efficiencies. All of the new ways that businesses can be more effective without necessarily having to put a normal process through. You still will need humans in the loop for many aspects of it. So I want to be sure to mention that this doesn't replace every aspect of what we are doing. But again, there are a lot of enhancements and efficiencies that companies are taking advantage of that can make employees even more effective with what they're doing. So again, there's a lot of excitement, even from a day-to-day personal perspective. The ability to go to some sort of prompt and ask questions that normally would require going back through and doing a lot of research, because there's obviously a large time savings with strong value add. So what are some of those applications across an organization that we're seeing right now? So these are just a few over here, but we sort of break it up into these like four quadrants here: internal and external facing. So whether internal would be within the business and external would be for their customers, and then types of the media, so more visual or more text-based. So things like creating new media, whether it's, again, imagery, video, audio, to be able to run somewhere, potentially, maybe an advertisement or maybe in some sort of promotion or content production. Having some sort of chatbot or third-party or external assist, such as, hey, can you help me book a flight? Or, hey, can you tell me about part X? Or, hey, give me more information than what your website says about product, Y. Things like that allows more deeper interaction with your data without necessarily having to always introduce a human in the loop, which obviously scales a lot better. Internally, there's use cases for creating presentations and prototyping, taking an idea and turning it into a concept much quickly allows for iteration, allows for development and prototyping much faster. And then again, knowledge management and distribution and dissemination of knowledge is key, right? So we've had so many customers come to us and say, hey, we have, thousands or millions of PDFs internally that, we need help with parsing and reading. Can Gen AI help us take advantage of that? Absolutely. We can take that and, help you find, identify, and understand the data within it much quicker and much more effectively than you can before. And again, these are just some of the use cases we're starting to see. So how can companies like yours best prepare to take advantage of Gen AI and what's coming up? So these are some of the trends or some of the, learnings that I've had that you can take with you to best prepare yourselves. First is understanding the consumer versus the enterprise. And this goes a little bit back to the internal versus external. So before you start doing Gen AI or how you can best prepare your business for it, understand who the end user is for your application. So is this tool or is this service going to be for a consumer, or is it going to be for an enterprise? And that will change, not only how you distribute, but how you actually go about producing it. There are many different services that are more consumer, like a chatbot that might be more applicable, or something more enterprise wide. And again, this doesn't necessarily apply only to Gen AI. This would apply to any sort of solution you're creating, understanding the needs, the use cases, the demand, the volume, a lot of the statistics about what the end use will be is key for your service, but especially true for Gen AI. And there's so many different, underscore GPT solutions out there right now that sometimes it can feel overwhelming. But the important thing is to understand who your end user is and how the service will be applied and used. Another key takeaway that we found is start with large foundation models to test and start with. What does that mean for those that are not necessarily familiar with Gen AI and large language models? The key or the underpinning of everything in generative AI is the creation of an extremely large, hence the name, model that was trained on a very, very large corpus of data. And ultimately, the service has to help produce new content that it's never seen, potentially it's never seen before, based on everything it's been trained on. And we talk about large, we talk about, either billions, tens of billions, or hundreds of billions of parameters that are being used in this model to be able to predict. Contrast that with what we were doing just 15, 20 years ago when we were at the tens or maybe even hundreds of parameters per models. Now we're in the billions. In some cases, I think people are even pushing the trillions of parameter limit. So these models are extremely powerful and extremely effective out of the box. And that's why we always recommend to start with these larger foundational models to test with. Many of the companies that we work with want to go from a foundational model to an adaptive or a tuned model very quickly. And while there may be value in that, there is a significant amount of work sometimes to do that. Fine tuning, as we call it, or parameter efficient tuning a foundational model still does require a good degree of engineering work sometimes to make it achievable when you can get a significant amount of value out of the foundational models. So again, another thing that I'd like to share and impart on everybody is when you're starting to use Gen AI and leverage some of these models, look to the foundational models first and see what kind of response you're getting. And then you could do that 80-20 or cost-benefit analysis if it's worth trying to produce something a little bit more acutely for your needs. Now, this comes up even more so. So data security matters even more now. In the Gen AI space, what does that mean? There's a very easy way or the ability to bring your data to a large language model like we talked about. So a common use case would be, hey, our business has millions of PDFs. How can we quickly parse it? But you want to make sure you could draw the line of what's your data and what is a provider's data, right? And who owns the models and who owns the data and all that good stuff. Here at Google, we make it explicitly clear if you are the owner of all of your data, which is something that we pride ourselves on. Any of the data that you use for your models is only available to you, which is very important when you are, especially doing some sort of fine tuning or parameter efficient tuning, or even leveraging tools like LangChain for those who have seen that in space. Again, many times it could be very simple to take first-party data that's yours and bring that to a large language model. in which case you need to be very sure of understanding of what are the different policies for the provider when you use first-party data for generative AI needs. And again, going back to that, first-party data is king still. And again, ultimately, while foundational models can provide a lot of value out of the box, when businesses need to have very tailored, very specific, focused models to be able to answer maybe internal questions that, again, nobody else would be able to provide, your first-party data is very important. So going back to the security, make sure that you are able to continue to govern your data, be able to cleanse and keep it up to date, have it ready to be used if you want to leverage it for first-party data or for a fine-tuned model, because first-party data is all important. And this is nothing new in the AI space. Many people in the past have asked me, can we use synthetic data for AI purposes? And many times it may seem appealing to use synthetic or generated data, but you have to keep in mind is however you generate the data, the models will take on those features or those learnings and weights from any model, any data that was generated. So this goes back to the old garbage in, garbage out paradigm, that make sure that you have proper data and you understand the limitations, especially if you are using third-party data. For Gen AI purposes, I think this again is especially true because you wouldn't be able to produce any form of personalized or any sort of like true to your business or your needs model without any sort of prepared first-party data. So again, quickly getting started, then I think I'll hand it back over to Lauren. Gen AI is something, or AI in general, is something that we are very obviously keen on and something that we work on. And one of our assessments that we work with our customers on is called our AI Readiness, our Gen AI Readiness program. Again, I won't go too deep into this, but if anybody's out there is interested in how they can get started or their business could get started working with us, we have our Gen AI Readiness quick check, which can allow you to, literally get an assessment quickly to understand where you are with respect to your AI journey. And we talk about a number of different pillars. So feel free to click that link to get started and learn more about it. But it's a great tool to get started if you want to be able to, again, understand where your business is and understand how Google can really help you accelerate your journey in the either AI or Gen AI space. And Lauren, I think I'll turn it over to you for this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tony, for this information. I found it very helpful and learned many new things. I hope you did as well. Thank you for your questions. We will be sure to get to them. But before we do, just covering a few additional resources in addition to the AI Readiness Quick Check tool that we just dropped into the chat. So first is the Google Cloud community. This is where you can engage with more than 150,000 of your peers and Googlers around topics just like this. So you can have conversations in forums and learn about upcoming events just like this one. We also would love to hear your feedback if you have any around this session, as well as ideas or suggestions for future topics. So I'll drop this into the chat shortly as well, but that's our event feedback form, and it should just take you about 30 seconds to a minute, and we'd love to hear from you. And then lastly, if you want to dive deeper into some of these topics around AI or data, we have upcoming sessions here in October and the beginning of November, notably around conversational AI using LLMs. And then we also have a security, privacy, and risk focus session on the 25th. And then lastly, we'll be diving into Vision AI on November 2nd. So see that third link if you want to sign up for any of those or see what other sessions we have coming up. All right. Tony, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions that have come in from the chat. So we'll start with that, and then we'll hop over to some of the pre-submitted questions we've received because we think these will be helpful for everyone here in the audience as well. So our first question is, what are some of the common reasons you said you have seen that customers' internal AI projects fail nearly half the time? Oh, Antonia, you're on mute.
Sorry. Great question. Thank you for asking. This is something I could spend like an hour on alone. So thank you for asking. So this is not necessarily something that I've said, but this is an industry statistic. But from what we've seen, why are AI projects, I wouldn't maybe say failing, but just not making it all the way would be a better way of saying it, are for a number of reasons. One, there's a large separation between what it takes to do AI and what it takes to do production AI or how to productionalize a system. What do I mean by that? So if you think back to, even 10, 20 years ago, when we started developing applications, software engineers were coding apps, they were building them. And, the way that we initially did it was you just uploading, doing something like FTP or SSH, something like that, for those that might remember that. And over time, we said we need to have a better way. We need to have a way to standardize how we, control and version our code. We need to have a way in how we can, check it in and then test it and clean it and prepare it and then build it and debug and all those things. And out from that came the whole CI/CD and DevOps, function and need. So now taking that into the AI, we're starting to see more of that, and that's where the realm of MLOps come from. But most of the people that are creating models are, more academically trained research scientists, data scientists, even, citizen data scientists, data analysts who have strong knowledge or excitement in the space for those that are creating the models. But again, they may not be very familiar with a lot of these principles, such as how to containerize your code, how to deploy it, how to check it in. There's a lot of hurdles, and even sometimes learning the technology that it takes to create pipelines themselves is a little bit of a challenge. Again, not to plug too much, but that's the reason we created the tool that I went over in the very beginning, is because we try to help bridge that gap. We want to allow the data scientists and the AI engineers to focus on what they do best, which are creating those models and those features, right? And spending time trying to produce the highest quality outputs that can resonate and have the highest degree of accuracy for the business so they can get the most value out of it. So those are just some of the few reasons that we've seen AI models not go all the way to production, but there's even more. So again, if you're interested in how you can accelerate going from a model to a pipeline, check out that link that we shared.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
And I think this is a good segue to the next question as well. So in addition to the link that you just shared, we have another question around what resources or features are applicable to help non-coding developers learn more about and to leverage Gen AI Builder. Can you give examples, please? Appreciated.
Absolutely. So if you're looking to get started in just understanding what Gen AI is and how it works, check out Bard. Bard.google.com, I believe, is the link. So that's really an interesting and an amazing entry point for Gen AI. That's the interface whereby you can go and start to ask questions and you'll get back generated content for you. That is sort of what we call our entry point, or one of our entry points for Gen AI. And there's really no learning or no training necessary. It's literally interfacing with a chatbot tool there, so which is an easy way to get started. If you're looking for more formal training in the Gen AI space, we have a number of trainings and pages available. Would definitely encourage you to check out Google Cloud Gen AI trainings. I don't have a link on me, but we could find one, or you can Google it to get that. And those are easy ways to get started learning Gen AI. And again, one of the cool things about Gen AI is that you don't necessarily need to be a seasoned data scientist or an engineer to get started. Yes, if you want to do more of the advanced things that we talked about, such as parameter efficient tuning, fine tuning, creating adaptive models, and leveraging more more technical or more detailed ways of invoking a prompt, which we call prompt engineering. You may need to have some degree of skill, but to be able to get started and work with one of our models to call it, get back a response, generate an image, generate some sort of media, doesn't require necessarily a developer background, which is amazing. So I would encourage you to check out some of the training and some of the documentation that we publish, and I think it'll make it easy to get started.
Fantastic. And I would also recommend checking out Google Cloud Skills Boost. We have some trainings there that you can get hands-on and follow along in video demonstrations as well. But everything that you shared, Tony, is a perfect place to get started. Okay, so we are going to move over to some of the pre-submitted questions that we've received. So what AI products or use cases are available specifically for agriculture and healthcare industries?
Great question. So within Google, we have some products that we're already building in the healthcare space, I could say. I would definitely encourage, if anybody's interested in learning more about some of our healthcare products, we have an entire section of Google's platform dedicated to healthcare. We have a product called Healthcare Data Engine, which I would encourage to check out as well. that may be applicable for those in that space. In the agriculture space, we haven't necessarily developed any formal products just yet, but I do know there is a lot going on in the agri AI space out there. Companies building, robots and models to be able to detect weeds from plants, for example, or to determine when to plant, things like that. There's a lot of content out there that I've seen just by doing some, cursory searching. So would definitely encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about those types of use cases to do a little bit of Google searching around, the different kinds of agri AI products and services out there.
Great. What are the data ownership, security, and compliance aspects to consider when offering an AI ML software as a service?
Well, this is a doozy of a question. So thank you, whoever asked this.
We could have a whole session on it.
We could have done over multiple hours on this. And we have teams dedicated to this. So I'll try to summarize this as best as possible. And again, I will start by saying I'm not a lawyer, so make sure to keep that in mind. But again, in general, you have to have a solid plan that really abides by the rules and the regulations of the regions that your business is based in and does business in. So again, there are different policies in different regions, such as GDPR and GCCP, I believe it is, California Data Protection Act. Again, that based on where your business is and conducts operations may apply. So that will definitely have an impact on data ownership, security, removal of data, which it wasn't asked, but it goes into the security and compliance as well. When you're building models too, there's a lot to also consider with respect to fairness and responsible AI. We also have sections within our Google Cloud platform around responsible AI that I encourage people to check out that talk about these different types of topics and how when you're building a model, what to consider. It goes a lot deeper into it than I could do even in a little talk over here. But needless to say that again, when you're building an AI model, your first step should not be writing code. I can summarize it by that. You should definitely consider all of the other parts of a model from a governance, security, compliance perspective as well.
Great. And I do want to share that we briefly mentioned it before, but we are hosting a session dedicated to security, privacy, and risk in the Gen AI world on the 25th. So the link to that is in the description, in the chat here. So please, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into that subject in particular, I encourage you to sign up there. Okay. Our next question is, would it be possible to connect AI to my database to help me with decisions?
The short answer is yes. So absolutely, that's what we do when we build our models. We connect our notebooks, what we call our Jupyter notebooks or Workbench notebooks, into a data layer. So it can be a database, it can be an EDW, an enterprise data warehouse. It could be even an object store, which in Google we call Google Cloud Storage. So by being able to connect some sort of IDE or development environment like a notebook with your data, it allows you to quickly query and to be able to make smarter decisions and analytics on top of it. One other quick plug I would also mention is we have a really cool feature within Google called BigQuery Machine Learning, BQML, where we actually bring the AI to the data. So quickly in the past, many times when we would be building models, data scientists would have to, again, connect either their notebook to some sort of streaming data connection to an EDW or to a database, or maybe take a sample of data and load that into memory. When you use a tool like BQML, you actually are applying analytical functions and models directly to the data and leveraging the data warehouse itself to process. So this provides a lot of efficiencies with not having to move data, bring it in and out, do subsetting, because any data scientist would know normally the larger the data set, the higher quality of the output and the more significant of the models that you'll produce.
Great. Makes sense. We have just a few more. Interested in synthetic data generation for model training. Any advice?
Yeah, so we covered this a little bit earlier on, but synthetic data generation I see as a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? So on one hand, extremely helpful, extremely powerful when you can't get real data, and that's quite often the case. So for example, you may need average temperatures in New York City in the month of September for your model, but you can't find it anyplace. So there's a tool that will generate it somehow. But you have to keep in mind again that however the tool that you use to generate data, however it applies that data generation or creation, it will be based on some sort of distribution or some sort of model itself, because it tries to make the output as real, quote unquote, as real as possible. But real is based on some sort of model or some sort of distribution it's been trained on. So whatever the distribution is that the model has been used to create the data, your model will inherit that, right? So you need to keep that in mind, is that has to be like a known caveat or a known understanding when you're building your model using synthetic generation, that it will inherit any of the properties or any of the nuances of whatever the model is that was used to create that data.
Makes sense. Now we have another industry-related question. So we talked about agriculture and healthcare. So now talking a little bit more about financial services. Where would you think, or where do you recommend to find the fastest time to value in the financial services industry?
Sure. So I guess I could answer this not industry specific. The fastest time to value, and I believe this question was in the guise of to produce AI or some sort of advanced analytics. So what's the fastest time to value of taking data and producing insights from it? So again, within Google itself, we have a number of services. One easy way to get started is something that we call Looker Studio, that can easily sit on top of your data, where you can be producing high quality insights and dashboards in minutes. Assuming you have your data in the cloud somewhere that can be connected to it. If you're looking for something more in the AI and modeling space, again, I would say the fastest time to value would be leveraging a tool like BigQuery Machine Learning, BQML. So I would definitely encourage everybody to check that out. So again, it's not really specific to FSI or retail or telecom or any industry over another, but these are types of services that will give you the fastest time to value, where you're able to say, okay, I see my data, I see maybe some trends in my data, I see that I need to collect more, I need to maybe aggregate or parse or cleanse it or do something else to it in order to make it ready for our model. And then again, leveraging a tool like BQML, you can be up creating models in literally minutes, whereas in the past it might have taken hours, days, something like that. So I would definitely encourage everyone to check out both of those tools.
Great. We also dropped a link into the chat around 5 Gen AI use cases specific to the financial services industry. So that can help give you some ideas as well. Okay, we have just a few more. Please keep your questions coming. We'll be sure to get to them. What are the main skills needed to work on an AI project or to have a career that involves AI? What are the gaps in knowledge and skills?
Great question. This is something that I think has changed in the last 6 to 8 months, right? Especially with the advent of Gen AI. If anybody's been out there reading either LinkedIn articles or just going through their news feed, they're obviously aware that Gen AI is becoming a larger and larger application in our industry. And really, the skills necessary to do Gen AI are slightly different than what would historically have been in the past. Again, like I mentioned when someone asked about getting started with Gen AI, you don't necessarily need to have a degree in advanced analytics, predictive analytics to do Gen AI. As a matter of fact, there's a famous tweet out there that said the hottest new language to learn is English, because literally that's what you need to get started, invoking. And that's why you've probably heard or seen the new field of prompt engineer, right? So what you're doing when you're doing prompt engineering is being able to take some business need and turn it into the effective language to speak to the large language model, which is English. But it's how you write the English and how you invoke and how you nuance that is really the key to doing Gen AI. Going back to a traditional AI project, you still would need to have a strong degree in statistics, mathematics, understanding again a degree of how to take data, how to leverage and parse it and transform it. But also you have to have a good degree of business acumen. When somebody says, hey, why are our customers, for example, leaving the site? And you're trying to put a model to predict churn or propensity to maybe purchase something, you have to have that business acumen as well. So that's why historically we've always said the data scientist is really a multifaceted and a unicorn type role, where you do need to have skills of data processing and engineering and storage, as well as the statistical, building models, creating features, tuning your model, understanding the different kinds of models and neural nets out there. You can get really deep into that, but there's a lot of great tools. One other training that I would definitely recommend for anybody trying to get started is something that we call Machine Learning Crash Course, which I think is mlcc.google.com or something like that. But again, we can find that link. Really helps you go from, hey, I have a cursory level of knowledge of the data science space, and I've done maybe some statistics in school or in the past, and I want to start to level up and start to be able to do more detailed or more complicated type of data science work. That's a great place to get started, and it can help you get running really quickly.
Great. Thank you so much. So we have one last pre-submitted question, then we'll continue with the chat. Should we use open source or SaaS for AI solutions, and how do I sell the value of understanding both better to executives?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about open source earlier on. This is always, it comes down to, I guess, like the build versus buy, I think is what they're asking here. When you're trying to sell to an executive, ultimately you have to remember, what are the business goals, right? What are we trying to do? Many times when I work with customers, they'll say the same thing to me. Should we use some sort of either solution, model, tool, platform off the shelf, or should we build something ourselves? And ultimately, you have to ask yourself, is this something that you want to own, or that's core or key for your business to differentiate yourself? Or is this something that you need as more of your day-to-day operations? So for example, I assume most businesses in the 80s didn't produce their own pens. They probably bought pens, right? And the reason was they didn't necessarily see that as a key differentiator. So they went with something off the shelf like SaaS. Again, taking an open source tool and basically building it into your platform is powerful as well. But again, you have to ask yourself, do we want to manage the upkeep? Do we want to manage the versioning and any sort of security or feature enhancements that you have to apply to it? So there's a lot that comes with that. So whenever you're having this build versus buy, whether it's for AI or any sort of technology, ask yourself, is this something that we see as a competitive advantage for us? Do we want to be able to say that we built our business around this? Or is it something that we sort of see as an operational need that we could leverage quickly and then move on to the next thing? So that would be my advice in trying to understand and then sell the value to somebody higher up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tony. We're doing a rapid fire and you're doing excellently.
My pleasure.
All right, we have a couple others from the chat, so thank you all. These are great questions. With Google and the race to building AI platforms, where should, I believe that's referring to internal teams and SaaS providers, make sure they are spending time on AI work that will provide long-lasting value and not get commoditized?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where can we position ourselves for long-lasting value? And it's tough for any one person to say this, but what I will say is similar to my last question, is you should really be focusing on where you see your business having a competitive advantage or a differentiator than your competitors. So whether you're in the auto space and you're creating software for, automotives, or maybe in the retail space and you're creating some sort of model to predict shopping behavior, if you feel like at the end of the day that your business was built around the concept of we do this better than anybody else, that's where I would say focus your time on building those types of those platforms, because ultimately your passion and your knowledge will win out. Many of these larger providers will create services that try to fit many use cases, but where your business will shine through is that you have that product or service differentiation or the industry knowledge that can't possibly be known or done. So if you have, again, key knowledge or key expertise in a certain area, those are the types of technologies, regardless if it's AI or anything else, that you should focus on to have long-lasting value. And I think the long-standing companies out there have proven this.
Great. And just a follow-up to that was around and making sure you're leveraging Google's best-in-class tech as it improves while building your own value moat. And I would just add, you're already on the right track. You're attending sessions like this. You're staying up to date with all of the latest and learning from our leaders about what we're doing, what's coming up next. I will also recommend and point out that if you want to stay up to date on the product roadmap and you're a customer of Google, you can do that through the Google Cloud community. And again, the link is in the YouTube description. So check that out if you're interested in getting an even closer look into what we have coming down the pipe. Okay, I think we have just one last question. So if you do have any others, now is the time. Is it possible to link BigQuery to a foreign, I believe this is a foreign exchanger, and get AI to predict buy or sell? You're able to select criteria to aid the predictions.
Very interesting, specific question. Thank you. So the short answer to this is, any kind of model that can be done outside of BigQuery could most likely be produced in some degree within BigQuery using BQML. So a lot of my customers are going in there and using it to build either recommendation engines or logistical models or classification. Right now, I think we support something like 15 plus model types. So again, like I would focus less on one specific use case, but try to understand how it would be solved. And again, once you understand the process by which, because I don't know specifically for this use case how it would be solved, but once you could try to understand the different kinds of models that would be necessary to produce an output that you're looking for, then you could look at, and again, I see we just shared the different kinds of models for BQML. So definitely take a look at that page. Then you can see if BQML supports that particular model type. And then all the other functions and features that are built into it for things like feature engineering and regularization and parameter tuning and all that great stuff that we do. Again, please take a look at the link there to learn more.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. This was a fantastic session, and I would love to have you back at some point to dive even deeper into some of these topics. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Before we close out, I'll pull up those additional resources and also encourage you again to make sure that you are checking out the AI Readiness Quick Check. With that said, Tony, do you have any final thoughts or recommendations before we close out today?
No, again, thank you again for everyone for coming. Check out the links that we shared. Feel free to engage with our community team. And hopefully this was beneficial for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Agreed. We hope to see you next time. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, or wherever you're joining us in the world. Thank you.